The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
Good morning to you here at 5 a.m. on this finally Friday, St. Patty's Day. I'm Maddie Jansen alongside Alex Fisher. As we enjoy a bit of a break from the rain, some evacuation orders that were issued during the storm have now been lifted. The evacuation order for East McFarland was listed yesterday afternoon. However, the area south of Taylor Avenue remains under an evacuation warning, which means people need to be ready to leave if necessary. In Wofford Heights, a partial evacuation in place for potential landslides has been lifted. However, it's still in place north of Highway 155. Kernville back open with the exception of Camp Kernville. That's still under an evacuation order. Folks in Tilley Creek are allowed to return home, and you can find a complete list of orders and warnings on readykern.com.
And this morning, Highway 178 through the Kern River Canyon still remains closed as residents wait for a blasting crew to remove boulders from the road. The boulders came barreling down the canyon wall Wednesday, slamming into an SUV. Fortunately, the driver is okay. The 178 had only been reopened for just a few hours after a previous rock slide when the boulders fell, causing CHP to shut down the road once again. Crews were unable to remove the two larger boulders yesterday. The D6 blasting crew was working in Fresno County yesterday on another rock slide. They'll be in Kern County later today for boulder demolition and removal.
Well, this morning, our farmers are faced with a blessing and a curse. While we've seen fierce storms bring much needed rain to our drought-stricken land, it's been tough for the ag industry as they try to adapt to the changing conditions. 17's Michaela Armstrong has more.
Kern County residents are still recovering from back-to-back storms of the last few weeks, so are local farmers. However, for Steve Murray, the owner of Murray Farms, despite the overwhelming amount, he is grateful for all of this water.
It's the biggest blessing that I've had in my lifetime to have all this rain come down. That the last 3 years have been brutal drought. Even in November, they were calling for a drought as bad as last year, and subsequently we've had 11 atmospheric rivers come through, and that it is such a blessing that we are getting water.
Murray says to adapt to the amount of water his farm is seeing, he has had to pay close attention to preserve the fruit he grows.
Anything that you do is like a fly swatter. It's good for a day, and so when it rains, we chase it with an organic spray and we follow it with an organic spray so that we can preserve the fruit, whereas if it was conventional materials will last 14 days, these only last today.
For fourth-generation farmer Jason Gianelli, all the recent waters caused him to learn how to deal with the unexpected.
We're dealing with nature, so you don't always get it. Nothing's ever perfect. So you just got to deal and roll with the punches as they come.
Gianelli says farmers know how to adapt, and as another storm comes, local farmers are preparing for what that could bring.
We're trying to be proactive as possible and stay ahead and do what we can do, and just we have a good team and we work really hard, and that's all we can do.
Getting actually a look at some of the damage from the overflow along the Tule River. One Porterville man who was evacuated took the risk to wade back into his home and grab important items in waist-deep water. He says in over 20 years of living here, the water has never reached his home like this.
The water just came to the middle of the property and boom, I mean, within an hour, it was just flooded. Everything's floating, sofas are floating. Yeah, 6 feet of water. It's almost all the way up to the top of the range. So yeah, no, I mean, it's pretty sad, but like I say, you got to stay positive.
Resident Juan Ferrer says he doesn't have flood insurance. Flows in the Tule River were significantly reduced yesterday, so some good news there.
Meantime, up north in Monterey County, water is receding in the community of Pajaro, but the devastation is not. Community members are demanding to know when they can go back home. Due to the severe flooding, residents have been forced to live in cars, hotels, and shelters. Officials say the tap water is not safe and the entire community is still without power. Crews have been working 24/7 to repair the Pajaro River levee since it was first breached.
Some good news this morning. Yosemite National Park plans to reopen tomorrow. The park has been closed since February 25th due to a series of storms that damaged roads and other facilities. Yosemite Valley will be open from sunrise to sunset with very limited services available. The only access to the valley will be via Highway 140 and El Portal Road, with a short detour in El Portal. All hiking trails are covered in snow. Visitors are encouraged to wear waterproof boots and traction devices because plowed paths can be icy. So again, kind of a slow reopening, if you will. It's not going to be like it's clear and dry.
Definitely not. Not for a long time.
Right.
Your time now is 5:14, and 17 News is your local election headquarters. We are just 12 months away from when California plans to hold its 2024 primary. This election, voters in Kern County, GOP voters, and across the state have a chance to influence what's expected to be a crowded Republican presidential primary race, leading to a key question about how Kern votes.
Now, given Kern's reputation as a red county in a blue state, it might be surprising to learn the registration in Kern is closely split between parties. But how Kern actually votes tells a different story. 17's political reporter Maddie Gannon has more.
California looks toward the 2024 primary. GOP voters in the blue-dominant state are preparing to play an influential role in selecting the Republican presidential nominee.
The great news for Californians is that we are an early primary state. Will be on that Super Tuesday on March 5th. We are often that wealthy state that's giving to a lot of these presidential campaigns. But we are also a very delegate-rich state. Early primary, it's going to make a difference to a lot of these candidates.
Kern County is one of the most prominent Republican strongholds in California that could be impactful among GOP presidential hopefuls. That is, if you look at how Kern actually votes rather than just pure registration. Republicans make up about 36% of registered voters in Kern, less than 2% more than the 34.9% of registered Democrats. Yet, this midterm election, 63% of Kern County voters chose the Republican candidate for Governor Brian Dawley, compared to 36% who chose the Democratic incumbent Gavin Newsom.
I think we've seen a decrease in Republican voter registration over the last 10 years or so, but we haven't really seen that translate into elections because people have just been falling off from the party ID, but still keeping with conservative voting patterns.
Democratic analyst Neil Sinapa says many of the 20% of voters registered as no party preference in Kern likely vote red, with Republican analyst Kathy Abernathy noting Kern's GOP voters turn out in higher numbers.
I think for Republicans, they are particularly aware of some issues that are at stake here, and I think they vote in larger numbers from that, and particularly because they wanted to make change. And they got some Democrats that are looking at the situation on water, on oil. I think that you saw many Democrats and nonpartisans say, we got to make these changes.
Republican chairman of the House Oversight Committee published a memo yesterday questioning $1.3 million in payments to Hunter Biden and relatives. The memo alleges that Hunter Biden and at least two relatives were paid $1.3 million from an associate of the president's son who had links to a Chinese energy company. The Republican chairman, James Comer, says it is unclear what services were provided to obtain this exorbitant amount of money. Comer's memorandum highlighted new evidence obtained from a subpoena of bank records. A spokesperson for Hunter Biden's legal team stated that as part of a joint venture, Hunter received his portion of good faith seed funds. Comer said his committee will continue to follow the money trail and the facts to determine if there is a national security threat.
TickTock, the app used by millions of Americans, continues to come under fire. The Biden administration is demanding that the social media giant's Chinese owners sell their stake in the app or face serious consequences. NBC's Bree Jackson is in Washington with the latest.
Sell your stakes or face a nationwide ban. That's the message the Biden administration is sending to the Chinese owners of TickTock. The demand follows warnings about the video app's influence on public opinion and data collection.
1/3 of Americans get their news from TikTok every single day. 1/6 of American youth say they're constantly on TikTok. That's a loaded gun, Congressman.
Lawmakers have repeatedly raised alarms that information from TikTok could get into the wrong hands.
We don't want to ban it, but we do want to get the ownership into people or companies that aren't beholden to the Chinese Communist Party.
TikTok responded to the ban threat Thursday, writing, "If protecting national security is the objective, divestment doesn't solve the problem." Senator Mark Warner says more may need to be done.
I'm not sure that may be enough, but it also reinforces the need for my bipartisan legislation.
The push comes amid rising tensions with China. The Chinese government said the U.S. hasn't been able to prove, with evidence, that TickTock threatens U.S. national security.
What I can speak to is what the president believes that he needs to do, which is making sure that the safety and privacy of Americans are protected.
The app is already banned on federal government devices. On Thursday, the United Kingdom announced it's enforcing similar rules. TickTok's CEO will testify before Congress next week and is expected to face tough questions about the company's handling of user data. In Washington, Bree Jackson, NBC News.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.